In this Blender tutorial, I'll show you how to create this animated black hole using procedural materials. Now, this tutorial will only work with the cycles rendering engine. However, if you have kind of a slower computer that usually doesn't work with cycles that well, this result actually renders pretty fast because everything is using emission materials. So because these are procedural materials, I'm going to show you how to join them together into custom node groups. So there's actually two different objects. There's the center part here, which is the center of the black hole. And this is just a very simple customizable node group to change the size of it. But then the other one here is the black hole rings, and this has many different custom values. So there's the scale value to change the size of the rings. There is the brightness, that's going to be like the emission brightness. Then there's also this distortion, so you can make it more distorted or less distorted. Then we have some different colors. So we have colors 1 through 4. So you could make like a blue black hole or something else if you want. Then we have this noise randomize, which I have it animated in this scene. So this is going to randomize the noise. Then we have the noise scale and the detail of the noise and the roughness of the noise. And then we have this rotation value, so you can animate it rotating around. I can rotate the Z value to rotate that around, and so that's how I animate it. And then also finally at the very end there's a hue, so you can just quickly change the color hue. So you can see like a blue one looks pretty cool and a purple one looks pretty cool. There's also the saturation and then also the value to make it brighter and darker. And if you'd like to purchase the finished tutorial project files that come with the procedural material and the finished animated blend file, you can get that with the links in the video description on my Gumroad and Patreon. You can also check out my Ultimate Blender Procedural Material Pack if you'd like to purchase all of my procedural materials. And I've finished creating another 10 procedural materials, so I've just updated my Ultimate Procedural Material Pack with all of these 10 new materials. So any of my existing customers can re-download the product files to get the new update with these new materials. And you can also check out my procedural material tutorial playlist to learn how to create more procedural materials. So I'm just going to start by selecting everything, and we're just going to delete everything. I'm now going to go to the add menu, and we're going to go here to mesh, and I'm going to add an icosphere. And then right behind me on the add icosphere settings, I'm going to turn the subdivisions up to 6 so it is nice and smooth and round, and then I'll shade the object smooth. Then I'll go to the add menu, and I'm going to add a cylinder. And I'm going to scale the cylinder by 3, so hit S3 and then enter. And then if I go into edit mode, we're going to scale it down on the Z axis. We're going to make it quite small, just like that, so that it's nice and thin. Let's now hit Ctrl 2 to add a subdivision surface with 2 levels. I will shade the object smooth. However, you can see it's kind of stretched and weird. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to go to the face select, and I will select the face, and I'm going to hit the I key to inset, and then hit the I key again to inset just twice. We'll go down here to the bottom and select this face and hit I to inset, click there, and then I to inset, click there. So it has a little bit more geometry, so it's more smooth. Now I also want to add a camera, so I'll go to the add menu, I'm going to add a camera, and I'll move my camera maybe to about here, and I'll hit Control Alt Numpad 0 to bring the camera to my view. And if I click here on the object data properties of the camera, I'm going to turn the focal length up to 180. Now why I'm turning it up so large is because a black hole is massive, and so if I make the focal length higher, it's going to make everything look more distant and more flat. So if I hit G to grab and then double tap the Z key, drag this out here, you can see it looks a bit more flat. It's kind of like an orthographic mode, and it looks like something in space far away. I'm also going to rotate the camera slightly and kind of bring it in, and I'm going to bring it in like this. Now it's going to kind of end maybe about here, so way out here you're not going to be able to see the black hole, it's just going to be transparent. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it in a little bit more. And then I'm also going to hit Control B and drag a box around the camera and let go, and that's going to add a camera boundary. So if I go into the rendered view, it's only going to render what's in the camera's view. And also make sure you're using the cycles rendering engine because the material won't look correct in Eevee. Let's also go down here to the color management, and I'll be using the view transform of Filmic. And then the look here, I'm going to change this to medium contrast. So now I'm going to click over here to go to the shading workspace. So I have the 3D viewport right over here. I'll go into the camera view and go into the rendered mode. And I'm just going to select the rings, and I will click on new here to add a new material in the shader editor. And I can just call this black hole rings. And then I will also be using the Node Wrangler add-on. So if you don't have that enabled, you can click on edit. You can go to the preferences, go to the add-ons tab, and on the search here, just type in node and just enable the Node Wrangler add-on. So I'm going to start by going to the add menu, and I'm going to search for a noise texture, and let's drop it here. And then because we enabled the Node Wrangler, I can press Control T with the noise texture selected, and that's going to add the texture coordinate mapping. And I'm going to use the object coordinate, so we'll put the object into the vector. Let's drag the texture coordinate and mapping back. And what I'm going to do with both of them selected is hit F to add them into a frame, and we can give it a label, and I can just call this mapping, just so everything is nicely organized. So now here in the noise texture, I'll Control-Shift select the noise texture to preview it. Let's zoom in here. So I'm going to turn the 3D to 4D, and that's going to give us this W value, which we can use to kind of randomize the noise and kind of give it a random seed. And then here on the scale, I'm going to turn this up to 50. And then on the detail, I'll turn this up to 12, so it's pretty detailed. And then I'll turn the roughness to 8.7. Now, if I look on this on top view, you can see it doesn't have that cool circular effect. So I'm going to distort it with a gradient texture to make it kind of distorted and go in a circle. So I'm going to search for a gradient texture and we'll drop it here. Now, if I just preview the gradient, you can see it's going back and forth. So I'm going to turn the linear to spherical instead. So it's white in the middle and black on the sides. So if I preview the noise, now you can see it looks like planet rings and it's going all the way around. And I actually used this effect in my Saturn tutorial. So if you want to check out that video, link is in the description. Now, the problem with this is that it's distorted way too much and I really can't see the noise. So I want the gradient to have less of an effect over the noise. So I'm going to search for the mix color node and we're going to drop it here before the noise. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mix between the gradient, which is distorting it, and the mapping here, which isn't distorted at all. So the mapping is going to go into color B and then the gradient is going to go into color A. Now on the mix type here, let's change this to linear light. If I don't have this set to linear light, you can see as I drag this around, it's moving the texture around a lot, but I find changing it to linear light just makes it a bit better. It still is moving the texture a little bit, but you can see if I turn this down, the blending is just a little bit nicer. So I'm going to turn the factor to a 0.1. So now you can see at 0.1, it is still moving around in a circular pattern, but you can definitely see it looks like noise. Now what I want to do is also change the gradient texture colors so that it's less distorted out here and then more distorted in the center. So I'm going to search for a color ramp and we're going to drop the color ramp here after the gradient. And then I'm going to take the black tab and I'm going to turn the black tab up. So you can see as it becomes more and more gray or as it becomes more and more white, it's less distorted. But then if I turn it down, it's becoming more distorted. So I'm going to have it kind of like a gray color. Let's hold down the control key and click here to add another tab. But then this tab is going to be fully white. So you can see as I drag this tab around, it's really distorted over here. But then these tabs are a bit less distorted. And so these tabs are controlling the outside. So if you want to use the exact same colors that I'm using, you can use the same hex values. So right over here, this one is going to be this hex value right here. So you can punch this in 919191, and that's going to be at the end. Then right about here, if you go to the hex value, this is going to be A4, A4, A4. And then the last tab is going to be way over here, and that's just going to be fully white. So you can see now it's a bit less distorted over here, but then as it gets closer and closer, you can see it's going to become more and more distorted as it gets to the center. So let's box select these nodes here and I'll press F and then let's just call it noise warp. So now what I want to do is I want to make it more transparent and invisible as it goes to the end. So we're going to create another group of textures up here above the noise warp. So I'm going to go to the add menu and we're going to search for another gradient texture. Let's preview the gradient and I want to change linear to spherical instead. And let's use the same mapping here. So we'll put the mapping vector into the gradient texture. So it's white in the center and then black at the very end. So now what I want to do is search for another color ramp. So you can actually just search for ramp and it's the first one if you search for ramp. So drop a color ramp right there. And then I want to drag these tabs around. And so where it's black, it's going to become transparent. So I'm going to drag the black tab to about here, and then I'll drag the white tab to about here, and then I'll hold down the control key and add another tab right here. And this tab in the middle, I'm going to make it more gray. And you can use the same hex value of 494949 if you want to use the same value. So it's kind of this grayish color, and I'll drag it over there. So now you can see it's black, and then it's gray, and then it's white. So I'll box select these nodes, hit F, and I can just rename this to gradient. So now I want to mix these both together. So I'm going to search for another mix color. We'll drop it here and I'm going to put the gradient into color B, and then we'll take the noise warp and I'll put the noise factor into color A. Now let's just preview the mix here. Now in the mix type, I'm going to change this to multiply and then I'll turn the factor all the way up to 1. So now you can see it's pretty much black, but then there's just a very subtle noise texture coming through as white. So now what I want to do is create custom colors. Now when I first originally created this, I just dropped in a color ramp and I just added some different tabs. And so if you want to do that, you totally can. But I'm also going to show you how to make all the colors customizable for the custom node group. But first, let me just add a color ramp here. So add another color ramp. And we're going to drop the color ramp here after the multiply, and I'm going to add 5 tabs. So we're going to have this one here, then I'll drag this one right over here, about there, and then I'm going to have one more right about here, and we're going to add like 2 more here. And I'll be creating some custom colors. Of course, you can fiddle around with this and make whatever colors you want. But for this first one, I'm going to make it like an orangey red. Then for the next one, it's going to be a little bit more yellow. Then this third one here is going to be fully black. And then this last one here is going to be kind of like an orangey color. So let me just go over all the colors if you want to use the exact same colors I'm using. So this orangey red one here, this is going to be ED4C00. And then if you go here to this one here, kind of a yellowish one, this is going to be FF993F. And the 2 F's at the end, it should just add it automatically. If I get rid of that, you can see it just adds it automatically, so you don't actually have to type that in. And then this one here is going to be fully black. And then the other orange one right here, this is going to be FF8C44FF. Let me select the circle here and hit H to hide it. So now you can kind of see what we're creating. So if you kind of drag the black tab around, you can kind of see what that's looking like, and the lighter one, kind of the reddish one. So this is a quick way to just set it up. However, I do want to turn this into a custom node group with customizable color values. So what I'm going to do is basically make all of these different tabs be masks, and then we'll mix them all together and add custom colors. So what I'm going to do is hit Control-Shift-D to duplicate the node, but keep the wires plugged up. And I'm going to hit Control-Shift-D and do that 4 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So this color ramp right here is going to be color 1 and 2, and then this one will be 3, this one will be 4, and this one will be 5. So because this color ramp at the very bottom, let's just move this down here to get it out of the way. This is just here just in case you want to use it. But here on this color ramp, I'm going to click on this tab right here, and I'll hit the minus and minus and minus. So we just have these 2. Then if I click here on this color ramp, I'll click here, and we'll click on the minus and the minus. And then I'll click on this tab on the other side and click on the minus. So you can see these ones have 1 and 2, then this one has 2 and 3. So we're going to do the same thing. So if we go to this color ramp, we're going to select this tab and we're going to delete these 2. And then if we click on the last one here on this side, we're going to get rid of it. Now let's go up here to the very top, and we're going to select the one here on the left, and we're going to minus the 3 ones on this side. So basically, if you didn't understand what I was doing, think of these tabs as being 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So I was deleting them on each one so that this one had 1 and 2, this one has 2 and 3, this one has 3 and 4, and this one has 4 and 5. So we're basically creating masks and we're isolating each color. So now what I want to do is make them be masks, so they need to be white and black. So on this color here, this is going to be fully white. So go to the RGB and turn up all these values to 1. We'll go to this one here, and this one, if you go to the RGB, click and drag down and let go, you can type in 1 and enter, so it's white. And then this one here, we'll make this fully black. Let's go to the next one. So we'll click on this color here, and this one, again, turn this to 1, so it's white. And this one, we're going to make this fully black. And then for the last one, this is already black, but this red one, go to the RGB and turn it all to 1. So make sure they are all just fully black. So if I Control-Shift-Select between these, you can see we have black and white masks, and each mask is going to represent the different colors. So now what I want to do, if I just kind of compress these, maybe drag these over here like this, I want to now mix them all together. So I'm going to go to the Add menu, and I'm going to search for the Mix Color node, and I'm going to take the bottom color ramp, and let's put this color into the factor, and I'll just preview the mix here. So now we want to replace those colors that we got rid of right in here. So we still have this color ramp, and that's why I kept this. So we can make color A fully black. And then if we click here on this color, kind of the orangey red, we can drag it and drop it right here. So now if I Control-Shift-Select between these, you can see they look exactly the same, except we need to add the other masks. So I'll select the mix and I'll duplicate it. So hit Shift-D, drop it here. And I'm going to put this result into color A. And then this color ramp is going to be the factor. So we're going to stick it right here. Then we can go to the next color. So click here. This is tab 3. And we can click and drag and drop this into this one here. So we'll duplicate this again and do the same thing. So this result is going to go into color A. The next color ramp as the mask is going to go into the factor. And then this one here, this is just going to be fully black, because you can see right here, tab 4 is black. And then for tab 5, we're going to duplicate this. We're going to put the result into color A, and we're going to take our color ramp mask and put that into the factor. And then let's drag this color ramp up here, and we can click here on the last tab, and we're going to drag and drop it right there into that color. So now if I Control Shift select in between these, we have the color ramp, which isn't customizable, and the mix, which is customizable. So that's how I turn the color ramp into customizable colors. Of course, you can totally skip this step if you just don't want to do it or don't care about controlling the values. So now what I'm going to do is click and drag and box select all the color ramp and the mix colors, and I'll press F, and I'll just call it color and hit enter. So now what I want to do is I want to search for the hue saturation value, and I want to put it after the mix here. And we're going to put the result into the color. So now we just have a hue and a saturation and a value to make it brighter and darker, more and less saturated, and just changing the color hue. So that can be useful in the custom node group. So we'll just drop it right here in the color. So finally, what I want to do is put this here into a shader. So we're going to select the principled shader and delete it. And I'm going to search for an emission shader instead. So I put it into the emission, and then let's turn the strength up. I'm going to turn the strength up to 5. Now you can see it's nice and bright. However, where it's black, I want that to become transparent. So you can kind of see through it, because if there's like stars in the background, it's just going to be super black. And so that will look weird. So what I'm going to do is search for the transparent shader, and we'll drop it right here. And then if we select both the transparent and the emission, we'll hit Control 0. And Control 0 is going to add the mix shader, and it's going to mix them both together. Now, instead of just dragging the factor around, I want the black to be transparent and the white to not be transparent. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this mix right here, and we're going to make a mask. So let's take the result, and we can put that into the mix shader factor. So you can see it's already working. It's kind of working a little bit because it's transparent here. You can see the gray background, but I want to make it a bit more sharp. So I'm going to search for the color ramp, and we're going to drop the color ramp in between the mix color and the mix shader. So drop right here, I'll just drag it up here. And then what I can do is just take the white tab, and I'm going to drag the white tab over so it's more contrasted. So I'll drag it to about here. So right over here, it's super bright, but then right over here, it's going to be transparent. So in the camera view, you can kind of see on the edges here, it'll just kind of fade away. So we can box select these nodes, hit F, and then I can just call this like shader, just so that everything is really nicely organized. And if you need to rename it, you can select the frame and press F2, and then you can rename the shader. So there's the entire thing. So that is going to be the rings of it. Let's hit Alt H to unhide the circle. We're still going to be adding another material to the circle, but first let's join this together into a custom node group. Of course, you can skip this step if you don't want to join it into a node group, but I'm going to for everyone who wants to. So I'm going to click and drag to box select all the nodes except the material output, and I'll press Control G to join it together into a node group. Let's hit the tab key to outside the node group, and I'm going to drag the node group over here next to the material output, and I'll drag it out to make it bigger. And then right here on the node group, we can rename this. So I'm just going to call it the same name. So I'm going to copy and paste the name. So it's called Black Hole Rings. So let's hit tab to go into the node group. Now right over here on the side, on the left, we have this group input. So we can plug up all the custom values to the group input to control those values outside of the node group. So the first value that I want to control is the overall scale. So the mapping scale, it's going to control all the textures. So we'll put the scale into the extra socket. Let's hit N to open up the side panel. And if I click on the scale, it's going to be 3 values, but I just want it to be 1 value. So we'll change the type to float. So it is 1 value. And then we need to turn the default value back to 1. And then if we hit tab to go outside the node group, we want to turn the scale back to 1. So let's go back into the node group. And the next value that I want to control is the brightness. So I'm going to drag the node group way over here, drag it to the very beginning of the setup, and we can take the emission strength and put that into the extra socket, and I can just call this brightness. Then I want to drag the node group way back over here. So hit G to grab. We're going to drag it way back over here to the noise warp. Let's zoom in here. And we want to take this factor, which is going to be the distortion, and we'll put that into the extra socket. So this will control the distortion of the noise. So let's double click on this to rename it on the side panel, and I'll just rename this to distortion. Then I want to add all the custom colors. So I'll drag the group input like right up here. Let's just drag it right over here. So this first color, which is black, I don't want to control this color because that's going to get rid of the transparency, but we're going to take this color B. We're going to take the next color B, then we can take this color B, which is the second black one, and then finally the last color B. We'll put all those into the sockets. Let's drag this down to make it bigger, and I'll just rename these colors 1 through 4. And I'm going to drag the group input out here. You can either press Alt P to bring the group input out of the frame, or if it's in the frame, you can click and drag and then just hit the F key to bring it out of the frame. Then I want to control the noise settings, so I'll drag the group input right down here, and I want to take the W value and put that into the extra socket, and let's rename this to noise randomize. And then I want to put the scale and the detail and the roughness into those extra sockets, and then I just want to add the word noise to them. So I'll hit Control C to copy the name noise, and then hit Control V, paste that there, paste that there, and paste that there. So noise randomize, scale, detail, and roughness. Then I want to control the rotation so we can animate it rotating around. So if we drag the group input back here to the mapping, we'll put the rotation of the extra socket, and then let's drag it and hit F to bring it out of that frame. And the last values that I want to control, if I drag this way over here to the color, we want to add the hue and the saturation and the value into these extra sockets so we can customize the colors, and you can rename those if you want to. So I'm going to drag the group input right back here, and I'll hit N to close the side panel and hit Tab to go outside the node group. And now we can just review this material. So you can see we have the scale, so that's working. So I can make it bigger or smaller. Let's actually select the sphere and just hide it for now to get out of the way. So we have the scale, we have the brightness, we also have the distortion of the noise, and then we have all the different colors. So color 1, color 2, then we have color 3, which is kind of inside there, and then also color 4, which is the very center. We also have the noise randomize, then we have the noise scale, the detail of the noise, and the roughness, which is basically another detail value. And then you can rotate it on like the Z axis. You could rotate it on the X and Y, but I think it just looks kind of weird. So it's better just to rotate on the Z so it goes in a circle. And then we have the hue, the saturation, and the value. So let's hit Alt H to unhide the other circle here, and we're going to add a new material, and this I'm going to call Black Hole Center. And I just realized I hadn't actually saved the Blender file, so definitely make sure you save the Blender file if you haven't already. So click on File and just save the project. So this second material for the circle in the middle is a lot easier. So we're going to delete this shader, and what I'm going to do is search for the refraction. So we're going to add the refraction BSDF, and we're going to drop this here, and let's just preview it. So you can see the refraction is making this really cool look, and it's kind of like distorting the light. Now this IOR value can be used to kind of change how the distortion is going to look, but what I want to do is kind of make it so it changes depending on where you are, so in the center or on the outside. So I'm going to search for the layer weight. We'll drop this here, and I'm going to Control Shift select it twice to preview the facing. So the facing has black in the center and white on the outside, and why it's white on the outside is because there's more of an angle, but when you're looking straight on at the face, it's going to be more black. So we'll put the facing into the IOR and then preview the refraction. Now you can see it's really dark, and so what I want to do is make it brighter. So we are going to search for the math node. What we can actually do is just search for divide, and you can see converter math divide, and we're going to drop it here, or add a math node to change it to divide, and I'm going to put this into the bottom value, and then the top value I'll turn to 1. So if I just preview it, you can see here it is before and then here it is after, so it's basically become a lot brighter. So I'll preview the refraction. So now you can see it's a lot brighter and starting to look a bit better. Now one other problem that we're having is it kind of looks dark here, and that looks really weird. So what I'm going to do is click on the object, and then I'm going to click here to go to the object properties. And I'm going to open up the visibility tab. So scroll down on the visibility tab on this object, and I'm going to turn off the transmission. So you can see when I turn off the transmission, so it won't view the transmission there for this object, you can see now it's going to be transparent. So we can close that side panel. Now I do want to also change how it is because you can see it's way too big, and we also don't have that like black spot. So what I'm going to do is search for a color ramp. So type in ramp, we're going to add a color ramp and drop it here. And I'm going to click and drag the color ramp out so it's as big as possible. So I'm going to take the black tab and drag it over, and you can see as I drag the black tab over, there is that really cool black hole. So in the center of the black hole. So let's hold down the control key and click here to add another dot. And this one I'm going to make fully white. And then I'm going to type in a position value. So I'm going to turn the position to a 0.25. So 0.25 for the white tab. Then I'm going to drag the black tab over here, and then hold down the control key, click here to add another tab, and drag this to the other side. So we're just going to drag these really close together. Then I'm going to hold down the control key again, and I'm going to drag this right over here, and we're going to put another black tab here. So it's going to be white right here. Then the white tab, the other white tab is at a position of 0.25. Then there's going to be 2 black tabs between them, and then another black tab. And so why I'm doing that is because now it's creating kind of that little ring effect. So the white one here in the very center, you can see is making that little ring, but then another black one is going to make it be black. Now the problem with this is that it's way too big and it needs to be smaller, so we can change this blend value. So you can see if I drag the blend value down, now it's going to actually start to look like a black hole, and you can see it's bending the light and it's kind of distorting it because of that refraction effect. So I'm going to turn the blend to a 0.9, and there we go, there is our black hole. So what I'm going to do is box select these nodes and hit Ctrl G to join it together into a node group, and what I want to do is take the blend value and put that into the group input, and then if I hit N to open up the side panel, right here on the blend, I'm going to rename this to size, and then here on the BSDF, I'll rename this to shader. So I can hit N to close the side panel, and I can hit Tab to go outside the node group. Let's drag the node group over here, and we'll make it bigger, and then I can hit Ctrl C on the name and hit Ctrl V to paste the name there, so we have the black hole center. So now we just have the size of that to change the size. So now what I'm going to do is create a stars background. So to create the stars in the background, we want to click on object here, and we want to change this to world. So the shader type is going to use the world. So now what I'm going to do is search for a Voronoi texture and drop it here, and we can put the distance into the color, and let's turn the strength up to 10 so it's really bright. And we're going to use this to create the stars. Also with the Voronoi selected, I'm going to hit Ctrl T to add texture coordinate mapping, and I'll use the object coordinates. So now here in the Voronoi, I can change the settings. So the scale, I'm going to turn this to 600, and that's going to be the stars. So now what I want to do is make it mostly black, and then just the little dots are going to be white. So we're going to search for ramp, and we're going to add the color ramp and drop it here after the Voronoi. And what I'm going to do is flip these tabs. So we'll put the black tab over here and the white tab over here, and then I'll kind of zoom into it to kind of see how it's looking. And let's drag the black tab way smaller, just like that, so it's really small. And you can kind of see, if you zoom in here to some of these, you can see where the black hole is. It's kind of adding a cool warping effect. So if we animate this, it's going to kind of look like the stars are kind of warping around, so it's distorting the light. So that is it for the world background. It's pretty simple. Of course, you could do more if you want to. You could add like some sort of nebula in the background or whatever you want to do. So now let's do the rendering. So let's go back here to the layout, and I'll go to the render settings. Because this is all an emission material, it can actually be rendered with very low samples. So I'm going to use the cycles rendering engine, and if we open up the sampling here, I am going to use the denoise here, but the render samples, I'm just going to turn that to 10, so it renders quite fast because we really don't need that many samples. Then if we open up the light paths, we can turn off a bunch of these light paths to render faster. So I'll turn the total, diffuse, glossy, transmission, I'll turn those down. It's not going to make anything look different. However, we do need a little bit of transparency because there is a transparent, so we'll turn the transparent up to 4, and then the indirect light, the filter glossy, and the caustics, we can turn all those off so it renders faster. And if I select the camera and hit G and then double tap Z, I'm going to just drag the camera in so it's a bit closer and kind of rotate it so it's full screen. So let's now render the image. So I'll just hit F12 to render, and it should render pretty fast. So let's now click over here to go to the compositing workspace. So let's now click on use nodes to use the compositing nodes. And the first thing that I want to do is search for a glare, and we'll stick the glare right there. And on the streaks, I want to change the type to bloom. Then I'm going to turn the size down, so I'll turn the size to 0.1, and then here on the strength, I'll turn this to 2 so it's a bit brighter, and then on the quality, I'll turn this to high. Then to add kind of a cool sci-fi effect, I'm going to search for the lens distortion and drop it after the glare, and on this dispersion, I'll turn it to a 0.01. So if I zoom into the backdrop here and kind of zoom into the stars, you can see the stars are kind of getting that kind of colored effect. It is very subtle, but you can see they're kind of getting like a rainbow effect on the corners, and that is that lens distortion effect. You can definitely see it a lot better right there. Now the last thing that I want to do, which I thought gives a really cool effect, is to add a bit of like static or noise to the image. So to do this, I'm going to search for the white noise texture, and then what I'm going to do is search for overlay, and we want to add the mix color overlay and drop it right here and just drag it over here. So let's put the white noise texture right down here underneath the lens distortion, and on the white noise I'm going to change the 3D to 4D, and that way this W value will give us a randomize. So this randomize is going to generate random noise. So let's just preview the overlay. So I'm going to put the white noise value into color B, and then we'll take the factor and I'll turn it down to like a 0.1. So you can see if I turn it up too high, it just looks really noisy and that looks bad. So just turn it to like a 0.1 so it just looks slightly noisy. And so there is the finished render. So you can hit F11 to go to the render result and click here on the top and change it to viewer node to see the final render. But I'm now going to show you how to do an animation with this to make it look even cooler. So we hit F11 to go to the viewer node. Let's hit the escape key to go back to the compositor. And I'm going to animate the white noise. You can see right here on the timeline it's set to 1. So what I'm going to do is hit the I key with my mouse hovered over the white noise value, the W, to add a keyframe. And let's now drag the timeline all the way over here. So drag the playhead to frame 250, and then the W value, we're going to type in 10 and then hit the I key to insert a keyframe. Now, if you select the white noise texture, you can see there's the keyframes. So I want to hit the A key. The A key is going to select the keyframes, and I'm going to hit T, and I'm going to change the keyframe interpolation to linear. And so now if I scrub through this, it's going to play at a consistent speed throughout the entire animation, so it'll kind of generate random noise. So that's going to be it for the compositing. Let's hit Control S to save, and let's go back to the shading workspace and we can animate the material. So I'm going to click here to select the rings, and then from the world type, we want to change this back to object. So now we want to animate this. So we want to add a timeline. So if you don't have a timeline, I'm going to click here and drag down, let go, and then click here and drag over and let go to split the window. So now I have a small window down here, and I'll click here to change the editor type, and I'm going to change this to the timeline. So I want to go to frame 1, and then you can see there is this noise randomize. So if I go into the rendered view, you can see the noise randomize is randomizing it. So I'll hit the I key to insert a keyframe, then I'll drag over to the end frame, so 250, and I'll turn the noise randomize to just a 0.3. I don't want it to be too strong, so 0.3, and then hit the I key. So I find that's a good speed for a 250 frame animation, which is 10 seconds if you're using the default of 24 frames per second. So make sure you select the node group and then make sure you select the object, and you should be able to see the keyframes. So if I hit the A key to select the keyframes, I'll hit T, and we'll change the interpolation to linear so it plays at a consistent speed. So now it's just kind of noisy. Also, if you do want to see the compositing in the viewport, you can click here on the shading dropdown and change the compositor to always. So there's the glare and the compositing. So I now want to rotate the Z value to rotate the black hole around. So we're going to go to frame 1, and I'm going to hit the I key to inset a keyframe over the Z value. Then I'm going to go here to the end frame, so 250, and I'm going to turn the Z to 100, and then hit the I key to inset a keyframe. And then again, select all the keyframes with the A key, and we're going to hit T, and we're going to change the type to linear. And so this is going to make the black hole rotate and make the noise rotate in a circle. And then finally, the last final thing to make it look really cool is to animate the camera. So if I select the camera, I'll maybe move the camera up slightly. So hit G to grab. And then you can also double tap the R key and then hold down the Shift key to use the trackball rotation and make your movements more sensitive. And I'm going to stick it there. Then I'll hit K and I can just insert location rotation scale. And then I'll drag over to the very end and I will hit G to grab, maybe drag it down just a little bit, and then double tap R to use trackball. And then hold down the Shift key to make your movement more sensitive and drag it up like this. Let's drag it down a little bit more. And then we're going to hit K and add location rotation scale. And then just like we've done before, hit the A key in the timeline to select all the keyframes. So we can select the keyframes of the camera, and we'll hit T and we'll set the type to linear. So now if I play this, you can see the camera slowly moving. And why moving the camera really helps is because if you look right here, you can kind of see by moving the camera, it's going to kind of move the stars around because the camera's moving. So this perspective is changing. And also these little stars here, which are kind of warping around the black hole, are actually going to move. So that makes it look so much more cool. So there is the finished animation. So you can just render this out and then you can export it together into a video. Now, if you don't know how to do that, you can watch this video here on how to render a 3D animation to a video file. I'll have a link in the video description. The basic process is that you'll render out all the images to frames in a folder, and then you can use a video editor like Blender's video editor or another video editor, and you can add in all the images and then render it to a final video. So check out that video linked in the description if you need help doing that. And if you'd like to purchase the finished tutorial project files, you can get those with the links in the description on Gumroad and Patreon. And you can also check out my Ultimate Blender Procedural Material Pack if you'd like to purchase all of my procedural materials. And I've just released this material pack with all of these new procedural materials. So if you'd like to purchase, links are in the description. Or if you purchase my Ultimate Procedural Material Pack, I've just updated the material pack with all of these new materials. So links to everything is in the description. So I hope you enjoyed the video and thank you for watching.